Welcome to Buy Their Fruits. I am your host, Jeremy Stone, and I'm here with my co-host, John. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. It's good to be here. It's good to be back again. I know it's been a couple of weeks. We missed y'all. Hope everybody's doing well. God bless everybody's listening. But it's definitely good to be back with another podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a minute. I know that life's been pretty crazy for everybody around here, so hopefully people aren't too upset about it. But we're doing our best, and we'll try to be more consistent as the year moves on. So, but today we have a special guest. His name is Paul, and he owns the. Actually, you know what, Paul? I'm going to let you do your own little intro. You can tell people who you are, where to find you.
Yeah, sure thing. My name's Paul. I run a YouTube channel called Understanding Conspiracy. I've been doing this now for maybe about coming 10 years. Yeah, what were you? Yeah, we're now 23. Yeah, 10 years almost. Um, I generally came at all this stuff at the start from a kind of a new age Gnostic psychedelic tripping perspective. The channel was actually just an art project for university originally, just trying to figure out what conspiracy theorists believe. And as the years went on, I eventually realized, they're all correct, and there's no conspiracy at all. It's actually just all the truth. And then as the years went on further, I obviously started to develop my own faith, and I came to the truth in Christ as the answer for why we have the conspiracy to begin with. And as the years went on, again in 2016, I started a series called "The Nephilim Look Like Clowns," based off a few things. Really, it was through a few spiritual experiences which kind of led me to discover this, and the 2016 clown sightings happened, which kind of solidified it for me, if you get what I mean, and made it click in my mind. So I started doing research into this concept of the clowns having something to do with the ancient giants of the antediluvian past, and the connections just kept rolling, and here I am now, you know, quite a few years later, 7 years later since starting that series, and I have 40 episodes of a series dedicated to breaking down that concept. Multiple live shows, hours of research, and I'm also writing the book about it. Currently, I'm halfway through, so that's me in a nutshell, summarized as quickly as I possibly can.
So Paul, I guess I was a former New Ager myself too, but I was raised in the church with a family of born again Christians who had very strong faith, which I myself thought I was born again, but kind of drifted away into New Age thought and New Age belief. And I don't think that I was, and that I didn't become born again until 2019. Or there's a big difference once you have the Holy Spirit dwelling within you. You start, you start understanding Scripture more, and Holy Spirit's convicting you on trying to live a more Christ-like life. That was absent from me when I was growing up. Not that I was as wretched as I could have been, but it's different. It's different for those whom are born again and have the Holy Spirit dwell within them. It's definitely different. It's very difficult to explain it to someone who does not, someone who's not born again, because they think it's all from us, but in reality, it's God. Through the Holy Spirit, chastising us and correcting us and giving us revelation. And
Yeah,
so, I found that very interesting because I've heard you tell your testimony
yeah,
before, um, and I a lot of truthers, and this is why I'm so appreciative of your apologetics, is because it's very similar to mine as being a former truther and new ager myself, and kind of looking at conspiracy culture and see how that's ramped up, and how it's continuing to ramp up
hmm
over these past few years. And so I guess the first question that I guess want to ask you, could you go a little bit more in depth into, because I know you briefly surmised your testimony,
yeah.
but could you go a little bit more in depth as far as like who you were listening to at the time when you kind of delved into conspiracy or truth or culture? As a lot of people sadly go down the Gnostic rabbit hole, but sometimes, of course, God can reach out to people who've gone down that path. But that can is a very broad path.
Yeah,
So, and there's a narrow path that leads to Jesus, right?
yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Certainly. Well, when I first came into it, it was in 2000. It was the build up to 2012. You know, the end of the world. The Mayan calendar stuff. Everyone was adamant the world was going to end on December 21st in 2012, and I was listening to all this concept, and I was like, what on earth are they talking about? Why do people believe this is going to happen? You know. So that's what started me looking into just typing into YouTube 2012 end of the world, and you start just getting all this flood of doomsday scenario imagery videos of meteors crashing into the sea and tidal waves smashing all over the earth, you know. And you had the film 2012 come out around the same time, so loads of stock footage from that film was made into these YouTube videos, and you had Requiem for a Dream blasting out in the background with this
Yep.
epic, you know, these words flashing over saying, you know, there's going to be a pole shift as Nibiru returns and Wormwood and all, all these words were bounding around, you know, and I was like, what is this mess? What is going on? You know, where does all this come from? I knew nothing about it, you know. And during that time, I was an artist in art school at university. You know, I was a heavy cannabis user, heavy psychedelic user. I was a man of the world, as a very worldly person, very anti-religious, borderline New Age, Gnostic, spiritual. I didn't really have much of a philosophy other than kind of like a Taoist Zen type understanding of creation. You know, I was heavily into Alan Watts at the time. Um, you know, and all of his every one of his lectures all through the 70s, you know, that he had done, I'd kind of listened to, and I was very heavily into Terence McKenna. And it was all about consciousness exploration. That was kind of it for me. Now, I'd never call myself a hippie. I was never really that type of guy, you know. I wasn't into that woo culture, you know, and tarot card reading and crystals, and I was never that type of guy. I was more logistical, scientific, pseudo-scientific consciousness exploration type guy. You know, that was me.
Institute of Noetic Sciences, does that ring any bell to you?
Not particularly. No, I wouldn't say I would. I wasn't well versed. If you get
Because
me
that's where a lot of it comes from, is Institute of Noetic Sciences, and they're actually being funded by the elites. I won't go into it in depth, but
Well, I think a
to
lot of it came from Helena Blavatsky's influence and work on the world, and her idea of this agenda.
I'm talking about modernly when you're talking about people like Terence McKenna, the whole Joe Rogan culture and everything like that, which Jesse
Yeah,
Potts, Matthew North did a lot of research about and stuff like that. You know, back in the day, for sure, yes, I agree with you, Blavatsky and Theosophy and Bailey and stuff like that. But it's kind of a modern push of pushing psychedelics.
yeah,
With myself, used to use DMT and salvia and stuff like that, every marijuana
Same.
too as well. So
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
All that, yeah, yeah. I remember doing. I think salvia was worse than DMT, to be honest, in terms of strength
Yeah,
and power. I think it was
absolutely.
insane.
Not fun.
But people could get that for free, well, easily, legally at head shops, you know, and then obviously you get DMT. And I did salvia first when I was 17, you know, and that was a hell of an experience that stuck with me forever. And uh, I kind of, you know, I went into conspiracy research with already this kind of, that's the world I was in. I was in the psychedelic realm, you know. So I came at all the research I was discovering in the conspiracy world about what is going on here. You have these evil satanic elite people, you know, and then you have maybe perhaps some kind of consciousness expanded ascension masters perhaps trying to communicate with us through crop circles to help mankind elevate their consciousness to the fifth dimension. I was kind of going down that route naturally because of where I came from, you know. But something never quite sat right with me, to be honest, when I was watching all these videos. There was always this undercurrent of it's interesting and fun to speculate, but the answer's not satisfying enough. It doesn't quite. There's something weird about it, you know, because I kept seeing all these people who believe in the devil, you know, ruling the world, being openly, blatantly satanic in all of their esoteric symbolism. And it's like, well, if they believe the devil's real, should I be believing the devil's real? Was kind of one this undercurrent that I constantly had under all of my research. It's like, they take it very seriously. You know, they know who they serve, type of thing. Do I know who I serve? Was these questions I was always kind of asking myself. So you know, like I said, I was always just steeped in this Zen philosophy. You know, Zeitgeist came out. I believed all the nonsense it was telling me about Jesus just being another sun god and all this type of stuff. And I never really went deep enough to actually look into those claims. You know, I took it all at surface level. I was quite easily manipulated because I was high all the time, basically. You know, I was willing to go with these whims and these ideas and these fanciful thoughts without questioning the people or the agendas behind them, essentially. But as time went on and as deeper as I got into it, there was always just the Jesus question was always there as an alternative, offering me different perspectives on what was happening, you know. And I just got to the point where I'd studied every topic manageable, like I could handle everything to do with conspiracy. I had done some deep dive into. I'd gone down every rabbit hole to the bottom of it I possibly could during that time. I made a huge list of all the conspiracies that are out there, and that was actually my project for university. I would sit there and I'd have this list in front of me, and I'd just say to people, pick something, and I'll tell you all about it. Just pick a conspiracy, and I'll tell you everything about it from the top of my head. You know what I mean? And that was basically my end of year project. um, Among other things, I had some psychedelic artwork I made along the way. I got heavily into sacred geometry as an artist. I love drawing everything to do with the platonic solids, you know, and everything behind that concept, and the flower of life, and all this type of stuff. It was just all very beautiful to me. But while doing all this, I kind of realized this is proving to me there is actually a physical design to this realm as well, that and universal laws and principles that are clearly designed. These things don't happen by accident. So everything was always kind of hinting to me, God's real. You need to start actually paying attention to what the Christians are saying about all this stuff. So after university ended and I had this project over with, and you know I was on my own in the world, I didn't really know where I was going. I had no direction. I was heavily burnt out from drug use, uppers, you know, MDMA, cocaine, psychedelics, cannabis, mushroom, everything you could imagine I was doing, you know. And I was burnt out. I was done. I was at the end of my tether. I had nothing left to give emotionally. I was emotionally dead, spiritually dead, I would say. All of this new age stuff I had pursued and this searching for higher consciousness and trying to get into these realms to find God had killed me spiritually. He gave me nothing, you know, and all these Gnostic principles of I am God that I had in my mind and I create reality through my own perceptions actually bear no good fruits whatsoever. If I can, you know, use your name here as an example, it gave me nothing but misery, pain, loneliness, and emptiness, and more questions than answers. It was like a tantalizing philosophy that made me feel special, but all I had to offer from it, and all I really had from it, was a bunch of word salad nonsense that answered nothing and gave nothing to anybody and helped nobody, and was killing me. You know, it was actually killing me. Like I was spiritually dead and possibly physically dying from all the heavy drug abuse. So it came to a point. I was actually at a stag do for my brother-in-law, and I was in a different city, and I was visiting family away from university at the time. I only had about a few months left to leave my university town before I had to come home, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had no direction, no idea whatsoever. So I was at like a low point. Like I was, like I said, I was in all this mental drain state at a very low point at this hedonistic party, you know, and questioning my life basically. What am I going to do? And I'd had all this, you know, I'd been listening to people like Derek Prince and other Christian talkers. Jesse Spots was probably one of them, actually. Now I think about the time zone, you know, just Christian talk. I was listening to people tell me about the Bible, and I hadn't really read it myself by this point, but I'd listened to a lot of people talking about it. And I was starting to feel convicted for my choices. You know, I started to feel this something was working in me, and in this low point, I ran a bath at the hotel, and I never had a bath for about 15 years up until this point. I'd only ever had showers. I'd only ever lived in a place that had a shower cubicle for like most of my life. So I hadn't really had a bath since I was like 10 years old by this point, you know, when you're still innocent and probably still have the Holy Spirit in you, that type of thing. And I just ran a bath at this hotel, and I got in. As soon as I went under the water, I said to myself, you know, God, just help me. Help me figure out what I'm going to do next. I have no idea where I'm going or what I'm doing. I'm a mess. I've heard people tell me, you know, this is the answer, you can save me. If that's true, then just save me. I basically just said that to myself. And I went under the bath to relax, you know. And when I went under the water, suddenly I had this huge shock of energy just rushed through my body, like right into the chest. I thought I was having a panic attack. I leaped out of the bath, ran straight to the mirror, and just as quick as it came, it was gone. And I was just staring into the mirror like, what the hell was that? I have no idea what that was. But from that day, everything changed. Um, no, I'm 8 years sober now. I don't do any drugs. I do nothing. Maybe caffeine. I have a cup of coffee every morning. That's all I do. I have no nicotine, no cannabis. I haven't touched psychedelics since that day. Clean, completely clean. I got a great job working at a supermarket. I earned a lot of money. I became a manager. I got manager's experience. I got wealth of experience from that whole thing. Negative as well. I learned a lot about how the world works in a corrupt way from it, as well as how to manage people and interact with people. I got given purpose. People depended on me, which was kind of what I needed. I needed that to get through life, I think, and to realize how important it is to have that. Um, I'm married now. I have a wonderful child. I run my own business. I'm now an artist. I get to be a photographer, a wedding photographer. I got this YouTube channel that grows. I was given this knowledge about this Nephilim thing that I seem to just be gifted and rolling with, and I've got this wonderful community. Everything just got better from that day. And I'm not saying I changed overnight necessarily. It was a long, grueling, painful process to lose all those addictions, but I had the strength to just do it one at a time. Starting with the psychedelics and all the hard stuff gone. Then I switched from cigarettes to an e-cigarette. I stopped smoking cannabis cold turkey in 2016. Just stopped that completely. And nicotine, I've been lowering the amounts now, and I quit at the start of the year completely and haven't touched it since. And it took that long to get there, but there I am. And all I had to do at my lowest point was just ask God, please help me. If you're real, prove it. Help me, please. I'm begging you. Just ask for help. And he did. And he's proved to me consistently since that day that he is real and he cares and he's there at every
That's
moment,
beautiful, man.
And my faith has only just gotten stronger with the information that it's shown to me through my own research. It edifies my faith every day. And I can't prove to anybody else he exists. Unfortunately, I can only tell you what happened to me that makes me know that he is real. And that's as far as I can really go.
I'll tell you what, man, I can relate to a lot of your testimony. I mean,
Me too.
myself, before I was a Christian, I was huge into conspiracies, and one that I focused mainly on, although I was into the UFO stuff and the occult and all that stuff, but something I really, really focused on was the New World Order in general and all its different facets, and diving heavily into that. And I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I studied it for like 4 years. And like I said, I touched on all these other types of conspiracies and beliefs. And at that point, I didn't know what to think. But, I met a friend on Facebook. And at this point in my life, like my brother and I, he's my twin, we got saved at the same time on the same day in my bedroom. But how it all worked out, like, it was all God, man. Like, I met this kid on Facebook. My brother and I were like, screaming New World Order all the time, and nobody really cared, and it seemed like nobody in the world within 50 miles of us cared about what was actually going on in the world, and they didn't want to see that what we saw, how corrupt it is and this and that. Well, this kid happened to live that I was reaching out to happened to live like 20 minutes down the road from me, and I won't get into it, but we actually have a lot more connections in life that we never really realized until we got to meet each other and became basically like brothers. But he came over, and it was like the night after my brother and I watched Zeitgeist, and like you, we just ate it up, all that information. It was saying how Christ is the sun in the sky, and his 12 disciples are the 12 or 12 apostles are the 12 constellations, and all this stuff, right? That they're just trying to, the first 10 minutes of the whole movie, they just focus on Christianity and debunking it. And we believed it, and literally the next day, because my brother and I, all we cared about was the truth. We wanted the truth, and we should have looked at the claims to this, but I mean, we didn't at the time. But when my buddy came over the next day, he asked if we wanted to watch a documentary, and that's pretty much all my brother and I ever did. So he came over and he put on, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called Age of Deceit by Gon Shamora on from Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. And he does the channel got shut down now, but you can still find the documentary on YouTube. People like mirrored it and stuff, but it talked about every single thing that my brother and I were ever involved in. It also brought up, like, it was heavily focused on the New World Order, the New Age movement, UFOs, and all this stuff. And it was strictly looking at this from a biblical perspective. And I had never read the Bible before, ever, but this documentary was blowing my mind the entire time I was watching it, because it was like God was showing me every single thing that I was ever involved in. And then the Bible was like debunking all these things or telling us that it was wrong. Don't practice these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the very end of it, it preached the gospel, man. And my brother and I, like, it hit us in our heart, man. It was completely supernatural. Once we heard the gospel, our hearts just got like touched by God, man. And we just fell on our knees and started crying and asked Christ to save us. And it was just a wild time, but it was amazing how he connected every single thing that I have ever researched beforehand, back to the word of God. And it's like he knew we were seeking the truth, and that's all we ever wanted. And then he gave it to us. He showed it to us. So we continue to do everything that we've been doing and researching and exposing all these things from a biblical perspective, because like you, when you see what's really going on, you see that whether somebody believes it or not, the elite at the very, very top are theistic Satanists. They run the world. That's their belief is in Satan, right? That he is the savior. And at that point, we had to choose a side. We were like, dude, well, if all these people are running the world are believe in Satan, that means that Christ has to be real. I mean,
Yeah.
mathematically, it's impossible for the small group of people to be running the lives of billions and billions of people and have it so interconnected and so sophisticated, you know what I mean? Without the help of some higher power,
Absolutely.
So we chose a side. We chose Jesus Christ, and from that day forward, I was like 19. So I'm 30. I just turned 30. So it's been a good like 11 years. But yeah, man, I really reflected with you on that. I could relate to exactly what you went through.
It's the same story for a lot of people. This is the thing. Like I have a Telegram group, and one of the pinned comments up there is, "Tell me how you woke up. What was the thing that happened to you exactly that made you how you define wake up?" Because I understand New Agers will also come to my channel, not just Christians, So I was keeping it loose with the description, like just whatever your definition of waking up is. How did you come to that realization? And the most stories are what we've just said. I was a New Ager, into that Gnostic realm of thinking, and then certain events happened which showed the true evil in the world and where the true power lies, and it kind of led them to discovering Jesus and being saved. It's always the same story. And I think I was on a podcast recently by someone who goes by the name The Raven, and he said we're kind of like backdoor Christians, people like us, who didn't go to church necessarily or weren't really raised religious, but came to Christ through this conspiracy research. And as much as there's all this deception within the conspiracy realm, which leads people down a New Age Gnostic perspective, which is obviously older than time itself, and the deception has never changed. It's always the same lie. You will be as gods. Is basically the fundamental basis of all Gnostic theology, and most people go down that route. You'll find most of them eventually always end up turning into from the Gnostics to the Christ truth eventually. And it's like God's still using this movement with all the corruption within it to still lead people to Him, regardless. And I love that aspect of it. No matter what, if you're really in it for the truth, you will find the truth, and it's Jesus. That's what will happen if you're being honest and sincere about finding the truth. You may start down the New Age Gnostic route, but you will always end up eventually back down that narrow path to that point that God is real and so is Jesus. It will always lead there, no matter where you start in the conspiracy realm. And what my job is, what I'm trying to do is cut that middleman out, cut that waste of time out, and say to you guys, listen, guys, look, if you're going to get into conspiracy theories, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to end up with Jesus at the end. That's where you will end up. Okay, you might go on a long, winding path, wide journey to get there. You'll end up believing all sorts of crazy things and perspectives. You might get stuck on one subject for years, like flat Earth or something, before moving on to something else, or Tartaria, or whatever it is, or Mandela effect. You might get overly obsessed with something. Your belief system will change 20 times, but you will always end by understanding that the biblical perspective and narrative is the story. That is the truth. That is what's happening right now. You will always end up there.
As long as you do what all of us did here, and many people are listening out there, we submitted to God ultimately.
Yeah.
I mean, we all three of us here are all born again. We submitted to God. It was the same thing for me, where I fought tooth and nail for a year or two, where God was calling me through people like you mentioned, Jesse Spots earlier, and listening to Christians, to Christian apologetics against New Age beliefs. Even though I was raised in the church, I fell away. And you know, it took a while for me to become a full blown Gnostic too. It was like it was weird. It took a while for me to become a Gnostic, and then it took a while. Actually, it took longer for me to finally, give my life to Jesus Christ. But it's it's interesting though that unless someone submits to God and say, help me, or I, repent, Lord, of my previous beliefs, or genuinely reach out to God to be saved, right? Because Jesus Christ freed the captives. There sadly are. I will say this, and one reason why I think all of us here are trying to do apologetics to the New Age crowd, um, is that if any one of us or all three of us, if we never would have submitted to God's will, and because a lot of people come to that point, and sadly, not everybody does. There are people who get very close. God's calling them, and they reject the truth. And,
Most of the time is most of the time, in my opinion and my experience, is that people just, when it comes to the Bible, they already have their mind set that is this book written by man and it's to control the population and blah 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 blah. I was there once too, but I took the time, and a lot of people have, but sadly some people don't take the time to hear the Bible out or read it for themselves to really come to their own conclusion about it. It's, they have this preconceived notion in their head, and they're stuck in all these other conspiracies, and they seem to,
it's a
when it
pride
comes,
issue.
It is,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, pride issue is what it comes down to.
Yeah, a lot
Because
of
it was the same thing with me. I guess one last thing. It was the same thing with me in that I, as a New Ager, read Blavatsky and Bailey. I just thought that they were practicing it wrong when Blavatsky was, putting Lucifer up on a pedestal and worshiping Lucifer, right? But in my own New Age beliefs, because it's subjective, right? We have the objective truth, biblical truth of God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit, right? And then, everybody else, as far as the religion blanket under there is concerned, because there's only one true religion, and it's born again, Christianity. But I believe in Christianity. Outside of that, all the other religions, it's subjectivism.
yeah.
And so because it's that subjectivism, I was like, well, yeah, they worship Lucifer, but I didn't, which wasn't true. I worship both myself and Satan, whether I realized it or not. And it was when I was driving back from Raleigh, North Carolina in my van, where I just broke down and told God, I said, I'm sorry. Like, please forgive me for all the blasphemic ways that I used to practice. And, please save me, And at that moment, I felt very similar to yours, Paul, when you were talking about, very similar to your born again moment, where I think I had the Kundalini or spirit of divination, or a Kundalini spirit inside of me, because I used to have a lot of grandiose um, dreams and visions and thinking, almost divining when I was a New Ager. Okay.
Mhm.
And I felt something like just like come out of my spine and just leave me. And then I felt the same thing you felt, which was the Holy Spirit entering me. I have no other way of explaining what this was. And it was the most intense love and I've ever felt in my entire life. And it settled in my chest. And I've never felt like my third eye or anything like that anymore since I've been saved and everything. But I still, when I feel the Holy Spirit within me, I feel this intense, unimaginable love in my chest,
Yeah.
that I've never felt in my entire life. And like you said, like that moment where I felt like I was having a panic attack too, and I was like, "What is going on here?" But then I was calming, and then in that moment, I had no fear of death anymore. Like I mean, as a human, we all fear the physical side of death, right? But as far as the death, as far as what happens to us after we die, as born again believers, we go to heaven. The Holy Spirit bears testament to that within inside of us, right? And so I know what that fear left me, and so and is that fear of death that drives people to sin, because a lot of the times they're trying to say, well, this is the only life we have, so you might as well do whatever you want, do what thou wilt, to live in that state of mind. And so after that, that intense rush left me, but I've always known the Holy Spirit is there, and I always feel the Holy Spirit. And it's a peace and a love. If anybody's listening out there who's not saved, that I could never achieve by my own hands when I was a new ager or by any other means, because it's impossible without God's grace by the faith that we have in his son, Lord Savior Jesus Christ. You can't come to it by knowledge. You can't come by to it by works. All you can do is come by to it by faith. And no matter how much you know, and how much you try, you'll never obtain it. You'll never obtain it. And it's only peace and love that truly matters. It's agape love, it's unconditional love. And it's sad, it breaks my heart to see people try to work their way to getting that. As myself, I used to try to work my way to getting that. And it's a free gift and you can't work your way to get it. It's impossible. And it breaks my heart to see people just, there's so many people get so close, they'll spend hours like we all did, hours upon hours, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours exploring any conspiracy theory, but won't, because pride primarily, they won't look into the Bible objectively and find the only truth that matters. It's sad. It truly is sad. And that's why I think that your ministry is important, Paul, because you are speaking to former New Agers like yourself and saying, hey, look, you know, Jesus is all that matters. He is the ultimate truth that you are seeking. And it is a lonely, barren road out there because there are not that many apologetics to New Agers like people think they are. They are few and far between. And I believe we might be entering into the end times. Um, there's a lot of work to be done that God needs to work through us to get done.
Yeah.
But it is abounding as much as the false religions out there. It is magnifying like has been seen in the first century.
Oh, the New Age has grown exponentially from when I first started. I mean, the New Age as well, even though there's still those, tarot card reading, ascended master worshipping type New Agers out there who are quite hippy dippy, airy fairy, probably not actually that deep about what they're getting into. The occultic Gnostics have grown a huge base since that started in 2012. They are bigger than ever now. It's like a lot of those New Agers who started in that simplified, commercialized version of New Ageism have now, I suppose, progressed, if you want to say it, or ascended into the Gnostic way of thinking, the occult stuff, and all they're doing is just basically Luciferianism. That's what they basically got themselves into. And the light that they believe is true is that Lucifer is the knowledge bringer. He's the one who gave us the knowledge that will free us from a cruel and vindictive God who keeps us trapped in an evil prison, the demiurge. And maybe not a lot of them, like a lot of them kind of create their own religion and God through Gnostic thinking as well. And they'll say, no, well, that's not real Gnosticism. It's kind of like the whole that's not real communism type of argument, and my version is different from their version. But the point is, they're all so subjective that ultimately the aesthetic baseline of all of their beliefs is you all believe you are individual gods. And you can be like God yourself through knowing enough stuff. And that's just not the truth. That has never been the truth and never will be the truth. But the Gnostic base is huge. And this is the strange thing with my channel. I attract them because they look at my logo, which is a six-pointed star with all the sacred geometry in there. And they don't understand that I've put that logo there because that's the conspiracy you need to understand. That symbol. Get to know that symbol and everything, break it down and in all the individual bits, and you'll understand what the conspiracy is. And then I'll point them to the truth, which is Jesus. So my symbol is a symbol of the deception you need to understand. But they come in thinking I'm one of them. They see they see my theory, which is this Nephilim look like clowns thing, and they give me all sorts of pontification and thoughts that go deep into the archetypical meaning of a jester within society's collective consciousness. And I shoot them down and say, that's nonsense. You just said a load of basically bullshit that makes no sense whatsoever, just because it makes you feel like you sound really smart when saying it. I'm telling you, they literally look like clowns. They're not archetypes, they're very real beings. It's something to do with the collective unconscious. It's a very real place where these very real entities dwell. They have a history and a reason for being there, and you're a fool if you think you have anything to do with why they exist. Which is what they believe. They believe they've created them themselves with their own projections of their own mind and using archetypical symbols of the collective consciousness of humanity or some nonsense like that. what I like about the Christian perspective is like it's very clear, it's real. Those are real entities with their own personality and consciousness, and they're your enemy, and you think they're your friends. Like, and that's
Right.
that's I'm trying to be as straight to the point and as realistic about the situation as I can be, and I'm not in there to get all philosophical and deep and about how to make myself sound smart. That's not my game. But that's I get so many Gnostics coming my way who think that's what I want to do or what I want to listen to or what I want to say or I want to listen to their musings. Then when I tell them I'm a Christian, oh, they snap. They lose it.
Yeah.
They lose it.
Yeah.
And I get this like common thing like, how can somebody be so smart yet so stupid? It's kind of like, well, ask yourself that question. Like,
Yeah.
you think I'm smart, do you? And I'm telling you, I believe in Jesus. Do you have some kind of cognitive dissonance going on in there? Am I not smart anymore?
Right.
Has
That's
something
right, brother.
has
That's
something
right.
It's
changed?
a bit of a bias.
This is what I mean. It's kind of it's pride. It's they don't want to let go of the identity that they've created in Gnosticism. They don't want to let
Yeah.
go of the idea that they may be a god, and they don't want to humble themselves and consider that maybe they don't know everything, and maybe they're not going to
Yeah.
be able to figure it all out and save themselves. Maybe they need some help, and they don't want to accept that, and it's rebellion at its core as well. It's pride and rebellion, and that's basically why we have a problem. That's why we needed Jesus. That's why the Nephilim were created. That's pride and rebellion was the very first issue in sin that's caused all of this from Lucifer to Adam and Eve to Cain all the way down to today. That's mankind's real problem: rebellion and pride. That's our world. Our world is centered around those two sins, I would say.
Well played, first of all, on your symbol, because that's people don't realize, but that's one of the most powerful symbols in the occult.
Yeah.
The 6-pointed star. That's exactly what it is, and people don't realize that. And obviously, we see this all over the place with Israel and this and that. But I guess we'll save that for another time because you had
Yeah.
a good segue into what we're here for, which is the Nephilim look like clowns.
Oh
And I
yeah.
need to know, like, what did you what what snapped in your mind to touch on this subject and really focus in, because it's something I never heard of until I saw your research, and I was like, this is incredible. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is awesome. So
It's
what sparked you into getting in that?
it's weird. It's a hard story to tell because it's kind of like a mashup of a lot of things. So coming from a psychedelic perspective, I'd always heard of the DMT jesters or the machine
Yeah.
elves and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was always very well aware of that thing as being an existence. And in a way, I went looking for them, doing my own psychedelic exploration. And I was lucky enough and blessed enough never to actually see them on the trip. I actually saw one just before I fell asleep one night when I was sober, funnily enough. Um, and I had this vision, we'll call it. And I mentioned this in the first video I ever created, and it was a very weird. It was just a moment. It was 10 seconds of a flash in my mind. And I'd always been a vivid dreamer, but this was something else. I didn't feel like this was a dream. I don't know what this was. It felt as real as anything else. I was in a place which is extremely psychedelic, like a DMT realm, and I realized I looked up, and I realized I'm looking up at this like 100-foot tall jester, basically. But it was kind of melded into a wall, and like its body was kind of half out of this wall, and it was made of black and white lines. It's like black and white fractal line pattern, and then these big wide purple smile and these big glowing purple eyes, and its skull was shaped like spider's legs, but it wasn't wearing a hat or anything. Like it's just the way its skull was shaped. Like these legs were hanging down and curving around its face at all angles, and that's just the way its head was. And I couldn't describe it as anything other than an insane, enormous, giant jester in front of me. It was terrifying. It was so large. I could see these, from my perspective, these tiny little golden things flying around it. These little wisps of gold. But when I focused in on them, I realized they're not tiny. They're big vehicles that some entities are kind of driving around this beast, flying around it in like little golden vehicles of some kind that flew. And it was like the centerpiece of this realm. In just 10 seconds, I saw this thing, and then bam, I'm back in my bedroom again, and I'm like, where did that come from? Like I'm sat up straight. I'm like, what did I just see? And that was like the first thing that happened to me, which kind of I put a pin in it in my own consciousness. I was like, right, I'm going to put a pin in that and move on with my life. I don't know what that was. And then as time went on, I'd kind of been doing my research, into the Nephilim angle. I've been doing into Gary Wayne's work and a lot of Rob Skiba's work as well, and things like that. And just anyone and everyone that was talking about the Nephilim, I was there. I was listening along, taking notes. I was fascinated by it, because it answered a lot of questions for me biblically, which I had issues with as someone who didn't believe in the Bible. Like, why would God send a flood? Why would God murder all these people? You know what I mean? And try and do all these genocides in the lands of Canaan. What was all this about? And the questions were being answered through the Nephilim narrative, which gave me a holistic picture of Christian history, which I didn't know about, which explained a lot of things which I knew were important. Like, this is important. There's something about this we have to understand. And throughout my years of looking into secret societies, I noticed the Shriners had clown factions. They would dress like clowns, and everyone had this. And I didn't think anything of it then. Nothing to do with it. Again, just something that was in the back of my mind that I kind of knew about. So as time went on, suddenly in 2016, we had this phenomena where people were dressing up like clowns and scaring the hell out of people, just standing menacingly on street corners or in children's parks with a balloon wearing a scary clown mask. And the media picked up on it and started telling that story about what was happening. And then it spread over to Europe as well, and it was happening everywhere. But I noticed all the media was talking about it, all the news channels, the broadcast channels, the programming was talking about it. And that clicked because I was well versed in predictive programming methods, psychological manipulation methods, all that type of thing, and the art of predictive programming. And I was big on psychology, so I knew the art of persuasion and manipulation and NLP and all these type of things. And I said to myself, right, if they're showing it on TV, they want you to see it. It's important. It means something. So something compelled me. I don't know what it was. It was this experience with this vision of this giant jester, to seeing this clown related things to secret societies happening quite regularly. I also had a nightmare where I was being chased by some Hatman like entity, which had a purple robe, flying ribbons. I have a whole video dedicated to explaining that trip. And I was just compelled to type into YouTube. I don't know what it was, but just Nephilim clown, anything at all about this. I pressed enter, and I found one video created by somebody who was making a mock, like a History Channel show, talking about ancient aliens or something like that. It was like his mock version of that. He was making a joke parody video as though he was making a History Channel documentary about the Nephilim. And he wasn't being serious. He was 100% mocking Christians and their belief in the Nephilim. That's what he was doing, 100%. And he basically described the Nephilim as having pale white skin, red hair, double rows of teeth with a big wide smile, cannibalistic in nature. He was saying all this stuff, and he says there's only one conclusion. The Nephilim are interdimensional killer clowns from out of space. And he showed like one of the images of a killer clown from outer space from the 80s film, and he basically just mocked this idea of the Nephilim. The Nephilim are clowns. Christians who believe in this are idiots. Basically.
Yeah.
And even though he didn't realize it, he was saying something that was deeply true. Okay.
You're correct, sir.
And I rolled with it. I said, hang on, what did he just say? What did he just say? And I started to make my own connections and looking into the history of all this, and I realized the clowns themselves, the modern version of a clown, is a symbol. It was an purposefully invented symbol by secret societies to represent the spirits of the Nephilim, so they can then dress like the Nephilim in public without people realizing it, and evoke the spirits into our realm through the wearing of the outfit. And that's a practice followed by folk traditions all over the earth. They call it ancestor worship. And they will put on rituals where they will dress like the spirits with the sole intention of being possessed by them. It's kind of like opening a gateway. Dressing like a spirit creates a connection to the spirit and allows it to come into our world through you, the vessel, the medium. It's what shamans do, And it's why shamans all have a very similar dress garb with the big wide rimmed hats, the ribbons, the feathers, and the big long trench coat. They find they all actually wear the very same thing across all continents for that reason. And as I did some research into the history of all this, which we can get into, it turns out, the clown was purposefully invented in the 1800s, specifically by a Freemason called Charles Dibdin. He had hijacked the harlequinades and the pantomimes of British theatre and from the comedic art movements of Italy through Europe, and he had modernized the costumes at one point, and he had switched the main character to be the clown from the harlequin. The harlequin himself has roots in representing the wild man of Europe, which is a Nephilim demon. But then that character got swapped with the clown. Then he did a costume change and dressed the clown how we know it is to be today. Prior to that, he was dressed in just normal servant uniform, nothing special. His character was just known as the clown, but he dressed in plain white robes, you know. But then it got changed into this colourful, psychedelic, serpentine patterned, crazy, wild haired look, you know. And then the clown himself, Joseph Grimaldi, invented the white face paint with the patterns and everything. And it's kind of like it was all kind of orchestrated to be invented and then popularized into theatre. And then from then on, that image of a clown was solidified as that's how clowns look, you know, and it's progressed into what we have today with the wild, crazy red head, wig, the big red nose. Everything synonymous with the Nephilim is in within the symbol of a clown. And it's so subtle, it's so you wouldn't know it unless you would bother to actually really dig deep into this type of thing. But then you look into secret societies and you realize all through Freemasonry is one thing, but once you go above Freemasonry and you reach the 33rd degree, you can become a Shriner. And there's 13 degrees to shrining, but every faction of the shrine has a clown faction where you have to dress like a clown. It's kind of like that's weird in its own right until you understand what I'm talking about. These are the continuations of the serpent cults of the antediluvian age into the modern age. These are the societies that believe they had the occulted knowledge gifted to them from Cain and the fallen angels, the seven sacred sciences. They worship the Nephilim and work with the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. They commune with each other because they are the physical and spiritual foot soldiers of the Luciferian agenda. They work for the fallen angels, always have done, always will. And it's kind of like it's their way of communicating with the spiritual soldiers. So the secret societies are kind of like the physical footmen who do the stuff in the physical world that forwards the Luciferian agenda. And then the Nephilim spirits in the spirit realm do their thing to forward the angelic agenda. That they'll have a boss above them, and this is just kind of their way of communicating. They dress like the clown to bring the spirit into our realm, and it's so sinister because the Shriners say it's for the kids, and they do it with children's hospitals, and and there's a whole lot to be said about the aspect that children are absolutely terrified of clowns. Studies have been done. Children don't like clowns. So who the hell said, oh, clowns are for children? At what point was that made a thing? And you look at these people from like the 20th century who take their children to the circus, and the children are screaming with tears and agony in their face and anguish at this clown, and the parents are just laughing like, ha ha ha, look at the clown, Johnny, isn't he cute and funny? And this child's just screaming, and it's kind of like, oh, how sweet. They don't, it's like the delusional, like they don't see the fear that is being induced by this clown, and it's kind of like, well, maybe that's the demon feeding off the energy it produces. Because the thing is, a clown can produce either laughter or fear, and those are two extremely powerful emotions, I think, that are feeding demons in a way, because there's this idea that demons feed off negative energy. Jerry Marzinski has done a lot of work on this idea. These demonic entities kind of loosh off of people's fear. They'll generate fear in somebody, then drain them of all that energy, and that person will just feel absolutely drained, like there's nothing left, and they'll keep doing that to them and demonizing them to feed off that negativity. I think laughter does the same thing. I think it's ironic that the clown can be this symbol that can be both laughter in extreme forms or fear in extreme forms. It doesn't matter what it produces. The medium wearing the costume is still going to feed the demon either way, whatever it produces in its victim or its clients, let's say, whoever paid to see the thing. And yeah. So that's the clown theory in a nutshell. That's kind of how I got there, and a bit of a random rant and a few extra thoughts about the thing. But we can get deep into other subjects if you know anything about the clown theory, or I can just keep riffing. It's up to you.
Honestly, dude, like that was perfect, and like a good example how this goes much deeper than what people think is when you get into other regions of the world and other cultures and find that there are actually clowns depicted or worshipped or talked about within their own writings and their own culture. Like if you I think I listened to one of your episodes on tinfoil hat, and you got into the Wajina.
Yeah.
Can you tell everybody what the Wajina is a little about? Because that one was one for me where, because I saw the pictures too, and I was like, wow, man, that's exactly like a clown. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it ties into the serpent.
I picked the
So-
Wangina because it's specifically the most obvious one.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be good for a podcast like Sam Tripoli, just to make the point clear. But the fact is, you go to every culture around the world, and they all have these ancestor spirit worship rituals where they have either a shaman, a specifically selected group of people, or even all of them dress in a specific way, and they have the sole intention of being possessed by the spirits, and they call them ancestor spirits. But they're not talking about your cousins or your grandmas or granddads or great aunties or uncles. That's not what they mean when they say ancestor. They're talking about the creators of their civilization, ancient ancestors. That's what they mean. They're referring to the Nephilim kings who created their culture, and their cultures are usually centered around nature worship, sun worship, pantheistic deity worship, or some kind of weird hybrid animistic culture where they worship objects of some kind. It's bizarre, but it's never God. It's never the one creator that these cultures have. Now the Wanjinas, specifically, they are something that are painted on the rocks of Aborigine art in Australia. I think it's Western Australia specifically. Now, what you'll find is that the Aborigines claim not to have made them. They didn't paint these things. These were left there by the beings themselves, called the Wangina. It's believed that when the Wanginas physically died, they went to a cave to die, and they painted a portrait of themselves on the wall. That's how all of them ended up there. And if you look at the image of a Wangina painting, it's literally a white-faced, round white face with two big glowing blue eyes, a big red nose in the middle, and a huge red halo around the white face. It's literally a stereo prototypical circus clown. And
Yeah.
the outfit they wear also has a big white collar, which circus clowns also wear, which is the ruffle, has the same thing. And its costume is red with polka dots, red and white with polka dots, which is the stereotypical clown outfit. And it's almost as though the Freemasons, who are traveling men who invented the symbol of a clown, saw this rock artwork and just made it into their caricature, which we call a clown in the West. They just added it, and that's in Western media. That's the typical clown you will see the most. And it's like they were directly just copy pasting the work of these Aboriginal, this artwork on these rocks. And it's because that's what they did. They traveled the world. They knew what these folk traditions did when they represented the Nephilim in their traditions. They all called them something different. They all had different names for them. They all have their own aesthetical, stylistic choice of way of representing them, but the themes are always the same. Some kind of wild, feathery red hair of some kind or headdress. They always put white makeup on their face to make their skin as pale as possible. They add multicolored patterns and fractals all over their skin, or polka dots. It's very common. They would also make it as though the mouth is either incredibly wide or they have no mouth at all. Red nose paint is also extremely common as well. And wild, crazy coloured, fractaled, psychedelic patterned clothing. I'm describing a clown, but I'm also describing every single folk tradition vaguely there, because they all have their own stylistic choice of doing the exact same thing. It's because they're all venerating the same beings, the beings they believe are the creators of their civilization, because the Nephilim were kings and rulers when they were on the earth. They were the creators of all of civilization at one point. They were the focal points of all the myths. They were all the heroes of old. They were the ones that people worshipped and venerated and looked up to and made artwork about. And these folk traditions are oral traditions that never changed. They were passed down right through to the modern age. They never changed the way they looked. So they're a glimpse into the ancient past when the Nephilim were still around, being emulated, being worshipped, being venerated. So there's this idea of headboarding, for example, where they would crush the infant's skull to make it as elongated as they can from birth, and they would put it in this weird wooden board contraption where they squash the skull between it. Well, what they were trying to do is be like something that they considered a standard of beauty or power. And what they're mimicking are the things that were the kings and rulers at one point, the Nephilim, who had elongated skulls, wide, sharp features like a serpent. And people don't like never. I've noticed if you go to like a mainstream article on things like cradle boarding or any form of body manipulation like that, which is just bizarre, they never hit the point of why. They always just talk about how beautiful it is, how cultural and significant it is, how sad it is the practice is disappearing, but they never say why they do it. They go, it's a standard of beauty. People think it's beautiful to look like that. Why? They never touch it because they don't know. They're either stupid and ignorant, haven't got a clue why, or they just don't want to accept the truth that there was something around that looked like that they want to copy, because they believe being like that will make me powerful and sexy and special, just like they are. It's no different than celebrity worship today. Dressing like your favorite celebrity, following their styles and their attitudes and what they do and how they do. That's what they did then. It's their form of celebrity worship. But the heroes of old were these giants that ruled over them with a cruel, vindictive iron fist. You know, they were cannibalistic in nature. They were vicious. They were full of pride and hubris. You know, and you couldn't stand up against them because you're just this tiny little thing. You know, who will stand against them, type of thing. But this is what all these cultures do. And even today, even though the Nephilim aren't around anymore, you're seeing echoes into these rituals that never changed, you know, and they still communicate with the spirits of the beings who created their world, the Nephilim. You know, as far as they're concerned, in their small, myopic little closed off circuit of you know, society, their little culture, the world never changed for them, and the Nephilim are still their kings and gods and rulers, even though they're dead. You know, and they still try to communicate with them regularly through the invocation, and they do it by dressing like them, and they all have some kind of clown feature somewhere. So what I'm saying is that the traveling men of the world, the Freemasons of the time, of that era of 1800s, you know, they were the only ones who could travel. They had the money to, the power to, and they have this idea of, you know, they travel in the east before coming back to the west, where they go to the east to gain knowledge before bringing it back to the west, and it's all a part of their ascension progress through the levels of Freemasonry, you know, and they have these phrases they used to say to each other to identify one each other as a Freemason. They would say, "Are you a traveling man?" And the Freemasons would say, "Well, I've spent some time in the East, but now I'm back in the West." And that would symbolize I've completed my training. You know, I've come full circle. And I've, you know, but then they have other answers to it. But they believed Eastern theology and ideologies and patterns and mysticism would connect them to their gods, which were the Nephilim themselves, you know, and that's where they probably picked up a lot of these images, these symbols, these practices while studying these cultures. And they would say, well, okay, well, they dress like that, they dress like this, they dress like that. Let's take bits of each culture and let's put it together into our own symbol for the Nephilim. We'll call it the clown, you know, and we'll co-opt the comedic arts movement because it's entertainment, and these people run the entertainment industries. They always have done. How can we get our symbol for our gods, the demons, the Nephilim, to a wide audience? And how can we get the people to venerate the Nephilim without realizing it and give power to the Nephilim? Well, we'll make it the clown of these most popular theatre shows of the time, the Harlequinades. And there you go. People are now going to physically pay to see somebody representing a demon and channeling it on stage and venerating the demon, you know. And the clown then eventually, the comedian, the clown, the jester, the joker has become synonymous with our society. It's so ingrained into it that people worship it in its own way without realizing it, you know. And the idea of the irreverent fool or the irreverent jester who breaks down all of societal norms and kind of mocks everything about creation is epitomized in this image of a clown. So not only the attitude of a clown is rebellion and pride and sin and gluttony and excess, you know, everything which goes against God in its own right, but the image of it itself is nothing but a caricature drawing of Nephilim-esque features. So let's
Which
get
is very Luciferian in that regard,
yeah,
because you're giving in to hedonism.
exactly.
And, and I guess there would be no difference to that than, as I've heard you speaking in many of your videos, to as well, Paul, the modern representations of clowns, whether it's with Stephen King, or whether it's kind of like the pushing of Huggy Wuggy, or the pushing of I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on you know, like Freddy Fazbear is as well too, kind of pushing modern day, which I've covered a lot of this through Elsagate, and you talked a lot about it too in your Huggy Wuggy video about the pushing of clowns and clowning and circuses to kids on YouTube with inappropriate, fetishizing and vaccinations and various things within the videos that are being pushed to kids, where Snopes is like, well, that's not what they're doing. And it's like, well, no, obviously that's what they're doing. I mean, if anybody has eyes to see and ears to hear, that you would see that. But there are a lot of people out there who, like you mentioned, through some sort of maybe spiritual deadness, or some sort of mind control, that they just don't realize it, that this is a bad thing for their kids to watch.
Hmm.
It's all the
'Cause I
conditioning.
yeah, because I police, when my kids watch, and when I was, letting my son, and as he gotten older, look at YouTube, I caught on that quite, I was watching what he was watching, right? And so it only took a video or two, and I was like, well, wait a minute, this is not nothing you should be looking at, and so I mean, even when I was a new ager, it was still, I was looking, I was like, wait, no, this is wrong, uh, you know, and so it's just interesting now of how they're pushing that to the masses to get them to try to accept it. And it's no different of how it was in the 1800s, and you could even argue, bread and circuses, uh, the Roman Colosseum times, or the plays of the Shakespearean times, where you'd have court jesters, right? You would have king jesters during the Shakespearean plays be the ones that tell the truth, right?
Hmm.
The jesters were the ones who brought the truth to the masses, that were able to make fun of the king and to expose the king, right? When in reality, even corrupt kings God has placed into power, sometimes for chastisement of a wicked people, and so it's interesting to see that this has continued on. I mean, your body of work, you know, has showed, the theory that you have, the Nephilim look like clowns. It's something that's gone throughout human history. Like, it's something that keeps being replicated over and over and over again. It does ebb and flow of how pronounced it gets in a civilization. And maybe now with the internet, we're reaching an apex that's never been seen as far as the exposure to demonic elements through the internet, right? Um, but and then as you talk about the Freemasons and Freemasonry and modern clowning comes from it. Something that Jesse and you had spoke of is the world order of the jesters,
Yes.
um, and that would be through the Shriners, and how they're very secretive. They claim they're a very charitable organization, and they give to good causes. Like children's hospitals. If you have the Shriners Children's Hospitals, but at the same time, they're not really seen very much, and not a lot of really is known about them. And then you have, the prostitute scandal, and the human trafficking scandal, and the allegations that they're very much involved in very sordid things at these order adjusters parties, and that even like I mentioned with Shakespeare earlier, well, they have homages and shrines to Shakespeare in their meeting halls, and so it's like, okay, well, what, if they didn't, if it is either all a big joke, which I don't think it is, or there's something to this. They're honoring Lucifer through, creation's a joke, God's a joke, everything's a joke, and through hedonism. I mean, it is ultimate do what thou wilt mentality, and I think your work shows that, that it's still replicating even in our modern era today, right?
Well, if you go back, let's go back to what you said at the start about the Roman circus. Obviously, Roman circuses were like circular Colosseum type things where chariot races would happen and entertainment would happen. Now, in between races, to entertain the crowd, they had their clowns, but they were more bumbling fool characters. Okay, I think they were known as things like the Sanio, I think is what they called them then. Now, when the collapse of Rome happened in the 5th century, and obviously there was like a bunch of Greek Roman actors that were kind of out of work in a sense, because obviously the Roman circuses were no longer being putting on in terms of the performances, and you would find that these actors, these fools, these jesters, these clowns, would band together and form troops, which would then travel over through Europe, putting on performances and shows, which would then obviously that's how they get their money, that's how they make their living, and this would become known as the commedia dell'arte movements out of Italy, which was Rome, obviously. Um, and they went through France and basically up as far as Moscow. They went to everywhere. They traveled far and wide, putting on these shows in Europe, and they developed these stock characters, these they're known as the zany characters. And there was all sorts of characters involved: a soldier, a servant, a rich master, his slave, his daughter. Just kind of characters that were stereotypes of people of the age, of societal hierarchies and norms. They'd have these stock characters, they would call them. And one of the main zanies was Harlequin, who was the servant of the rich man. And Harlequin was basically the proto jester, okay? But he was actually specifically based from a character earlier known as Arlecchino, through Italian. obviously this comedic art movement that came out of Italy, Al Licino. And I think it seems like he kind of developed after they traveled a while. I think they learned a lot about this tradition that Europeans had all over Europe called the wild man. And you'll see it everywhere, all over Europe. Mainly in Eastern Europe, they have festivals today called the Cookery, which are dedicated to the wild man venerations, where they dress like Nephilim, basically big hairy Nephilim, giants and monsters with big teeth, bulging eyes, covered in hair. And Harley Quinn or Arlecchino is based off a specific French version of the wild man image, who is called Helikins. And Helikins is described as this tall green man type giant, with a big club over his shoulder, and he had a band of demons that would follow him from town to town, causing chaos, basically. But even that idea is based off of Dionysus, the giant god-like man who would have a band of merry demons or fauns and maenads who would follow him from town to town, bringing merriment and revelry and sin, basically. So it's a highly demonized version of this Dionysus story coming out of obviously highly Christianized medieval Europe at the time. So fundamentally, Harley Quinn is literally based off a Nephilim demon called Helikins, who is a giant. That's literally where Harley Quinn comes from. That is his role. And he would play the role of the demon in the plays originally. He would have a sharp, evil, spiteful wit about him, and he would be witty and fast and sharp. And he would slap the stick and change the scene. He had magical powers. He was kind of outside of the play, but within the play. He was the fourth wall breaker. He was the symbol of the demonic, of the magic, of everything to do with basically demons. It was his embodiment, and that was him. That was fundamentally who Harlequin was. And then as the years went on, we're going out of the 16th century into the 17th, into the 18th. Harlequin changed, and he became softer, became more foolish, less wit, not as sharp. He started to become more of just the love interest of the rich man, Columbine, the daughter, and he would be the doting fool trying to get with the daughter, and then the clown, the other servant, would kind of be the foil, would get in his way and try and stop him from getting with the girl and all this type of stuff. He would lose his Satanism, he would lose that edge, and then in the 1800s, Joseph Grimaldi popularized the clown so much in the modern British versions of the Harlequinades that the clown would take over the Harlequin, basically, and he became the lead character in these shows where the Harlequin was originally the lead, and the clown took on the role that Harlequin originally had. He was the sharp-witted demon character once more. So the clown swapped with the Harlequin and became the Harlequin's original character. And then there was this costume change where the clown was made to look a lot more like the wild man, which the Harlequin originally looked like. Because the Harlequin's original form of dress was white clothing, multicolored patchworks all over his thing, with a black mask with a horn on it. Harlequin's outfit changed into a diamond pattern shape with a kind of like a sailor's hat. And obviously, the new clown outfit which was created looked a lot like the original Harlequin's outfit, which was the patchwork Wildman, the demon outfit, basically. So it's kind of like the clown replaced the Harlequin and became the Harlequin's role. So the clown and the Harlequin are one in the same character that both specifically represent a demon. It's not even like metaphorical; it's literal. Like that's literally what they're supposed to represent. And then that kind of got forgot as the circuses came around, and it just became a kind of like a symbol of kind of like the bumbling fool again. That's kind of how the clown became again into the modern era, this image of a bumbling fool. For the kids, but I do believe that was just a way of creating invocation rituals using the circus as a platform. Because the original circuses that came out of Britain, first of all. It was equestrian shows where this general would put on horse shows. Basically, we're going around a circle constantly doing tricks on the back of horses. And then that idea got kind of popularized in America, and then Freemasons created the first circuses. Barnum and Bailey's show, the Ringling Bros are the most famous. But you'll find it was basically Freemason affiliated groups who would create the first circuses, and they would put on a huge combined show effort. All these Freemasons, which was called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And they would tell the story of obviously the Goetia, the demons, and the Queen, all that type of stuff would be told through this circus performance. And it was described by Freemasons of the time as witnessing their sacred rituals, which they would normally see in the halls that they have, their little covens, on the grand scale, you know. So I believe that's why the clown was co-opted as a symbol, so it could be used in these giant rituals, which would normally be performed inside the I'm blanking on the name of the places Freemasons go. The halls, I think they're called the Freemason halls. So they would normally be put on a small scale. Now they're on a massive scale with the public watching as well. These invocation rituals, and they have the characters dressed up like clowns, which are the Nephilim. So the circus itself is just a giant ritual, literally. So the ringmaster wears a top hat, wears the long overcoat, has the cane. He is basically the worshipful Grand Master of the Freemason Lodge. It's the same character from the Freemason Lodge ritual. That's what he would wear. Only the worshipful Grand Master is allowed to wear a top hat in a Freemason Lodge. No one else can. And the ringleader of the circus is the Hat Man, the top hat wearing ringleader who's orchestrating the ritual. Then he has his Freemasons all around him who would then do the rituals at his behest and his control. But in the circus format, it's the clowns. They dress like clowns instead, you know, and it's just their way of literally putting on huge rituals that bring demons into the world. That's literally what it is. But to the public, it's a fun spectacle for the kids. To the unwashed, uninitiated masses, it's entertainment. It's a bit of fun. It's something to do. But to the people who created it, it's a deadly serious ritual. Deadly serious. And that's how clowns are not really a laughing matter. You know, that's where clowns come from, the origin story to the modern age. And the symbol of a clown never changed. It's just become more and more trivialized as time has gone on. And then we've seen with the modern advent of modern media, the evil clown stereotype has become a thing in movies and films, but it's kind of redundant because they always were, if you get what I mean. It's just now they're being externalized and they're telling you clowns are evil. Clowns represent the embodiment of the demon, of the wild man, you know. So something like It, for example, is a perfect embodiment of a disembodied Nephilim spirit. First of all, it's a shapeshifter demon spider monster of some kind. The Nephilim themselves were shape-shifting, hybridized, weird creatures. You know, and it has this form of a clown. I mean, first of all, what does it do? It feeds off the fear of children to gain itself more power and strength into the physical realm. Well, we know that demons use fear as a means of feeding themselves. It's literally saying, "Oh, clowns are demons are clowns," are the same thing. I think it becomes a clown because it knows that that is what the child is scared of in order to specifically get the fear from the child. I think that's what it is. But I mean, it's one thing. It's a bit on the nose, to be honest. You know, with evil clown demon symbolism. If you go and want to watch something a bit more kind of subtle, in 2015, a film came out called Cloyne or Clown. I think it was just called Clown, but it was about a man who needed a costume for his daughter's birthday party. He finds a clown costume in the attic. He puts the clown costume on, entertains his daughter, tries to take off the costume at the end of the day. He can't remove it. No matter what he does, it's stuck to his skin. Turns out he's put on the skin of an ancient demon called a Cloyne, and now he is possessed by the demon. In order to take off the costume, he has to eat 5 children. So another definitive link there in modern media that clowns are literally demons. Demons literally looks like clowns and they possess people to this day. Maybe not as obvious as putting on their skin, but that's what the role they're still playing in society today through possession. Dressing like a clown will make you be possessed by the spirit of a Nephilim. That's what that film is directly telling you. And also it's explaining their nature. They were cannibalistic, they ate children and humans. You know, it's all there in the film to see in terms of symbolism, the externalization of the hierarchy, if you want to call it, predictive programming of some kind. But they tell you now out in the open, clowns are literally representations of demons, which is why it was so easy for me today to stop pointing it out, I think, through my theory, which is why I think it rings so true for so many people as well. And which is why I think the 2016 clown sightings were no accident. There was, if the media was pointing it out to you, look at all these people dressed like clowns. It's like they were trying to explain to you the Nephilim spirits are going to become a lot more prominent from now on. You're going to see a lot more of the Nephilim from now. we are going to make them return. In Revelations, it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. The pit will open up, the Nephilim will return. I don't know exactly in what form. Maybe through some transhumanist means. I'm pretty sure they're working on ways to get them back here physically. Maybe it is through literal mass possession. I don't know exactly, but the spirits will return. I think that was the first hint in the media. So what the media did was use the symbol of a clown, so those who know what that symbol means, the initiated, could see the message. Ah, the Nephilim. I see a clown, Nephilim. They know that. That's their symbol. We don't. We don't know what that means, but they see on the news, and it's a message of some kind. It was telling them something. Oh, now's our time. Now's our time to push the agenda forward for the Nephilim to return. Something like that was happening. And what happened since 2016? Well, the advent of the meme in the collective psyche of humanity was Clown World. We're suddenly living in Clown World. And that symbol was everywhere with Pepe as well. And it's kind of everyone knows we live in Clown World now. What does that mean?
Trump became president in 2016.
Oh yeah, everything changed from that
Yeah.
period, didn't it? It's like that clown was a symbol heralding in the demonic. And I do believe Helena Blavatsky wrote that in 2025 is when she intends to have the externalization of the hierarchy happen.
Alice Bailey mentioned that as well too.
Yeah.
And
and I think that was the symbol to say the demonic are coming back, guys. It's time for us to open the portals. I think that's what was going on.
It's funny too, because it's almost like that event in 2016 also sparked that fear in people about clowns again, because for a while they were so watered down. You know what I mean? Like it was pretty well watered down, and then in 2016 it was all over the news. It was all over the place for a couple weeks, and it really brought back that fear that clowns once gave.
Yeah. If they put it in the media, they want you to see it. If they put it on the news, they want you to see it, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. If it's on that box, it's there on purpose. Yep. And you can't. Everything's a symbol. Everything's like their language is symbols. That's all the clown is. It's a symbol. It's a symbol they have created to represent something very specific. Their gods, the Nephilim. And again, I'm talking about quite mainstream popular cultural stuff here. In terms of, again, if you go to ancient cultures all around the world, they've always dressed like clowns to venerate their ancestors. They've always done it. It's just not been a part of the Western culture. The Western's version of it is what we call a clown. And we don't know that's what we do when we dress like a clown. So, I mean, if you look at the phenomena of people who have dressed like clowns in history, you have the performers, obviously, who are beloved, and maybe not all of them know what they're doing, but there's this common reoccurring story happening lately where people who have dressed like clowns have started doing heinous things. Clown serial killers, things like that. And it seems like whenever Satanism or demons are involved, they in some way clown themselves up or add a clown-like feature to themselves in some bizarre way. I was reading about a murderer who murdered a woman in a motel in America, not maybe 5 years ago, maybe not that long ago, and he himself had his mouth tattooed to look wider with a black rim, and he has since put the big black slits down the eyes, and he's made himself look more and more clownish as possible. He's murdered another man in prison since, ripped the guy to pieces, and wore like pieces of his body around his neck as a necklace before the guards came in and found out what he did to him. He's an open Satanist. He worships Satan, and he says it. And what has he done but put clown imagery all over him in forms of tattoos? Why? If you're a Satanist who worships demons, why have you leaned towards clown imagery? What's the purpose? There was a woman who in the UK who stabbed her 19-year-old lover about 7 times, dressed like a clown. And she knew purposefully he was scared of clowns, but she did it anyway, and then pinned him down while trying to have sex with him, made him cover his face up with a pillow, and once he covered his face up, she stabbed him. So bizarre that this clown thing is linked with it, you know what I mean? There's loads of stories. Recently, a guy, very recently in the news, my wife sent me this, I think he works at a school, he has a clown fetish, and he was making his students dress like clowns. Right? That's pretty messed up. You know what I mean? It's like, why is this?
That was in the news recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is going on?
He was a college professor, I think.
Exactly. We're seeing a lot of this. Another one as well. Very recently got exposed in extreme. Let's call it a map individual to try and avoid the algorithm, but somebody who was heavily into minors has been exposed online recently, and he goes by the name of the Giggly Goon Clown, and he has this entire personality about being this heinous clown character, this persona he created, and he has been caught and exposed for doing literally the worst possible things human beings can do. Like, it gets worse and worse the more you look into what this character has done, what he's encouraged other people to do, and it's like as soon as the demonic is involved, so is clown imagery. They're synonymous with each other.
John Wayne Gacy, right? He's a
Exactly.
serial killer, and he was a clown, and he was a Freemason.
Exactly. Yeah, this is what I mean. They're just synonymous with each other. Like I said, in terms of like if Freemasons know what they're doing, you know, and the Shriners specifically venerate the clown by dressing like them regularly, then you have this Royal Order of the Jesters. And get this, you have to be a full-fledged member and higher member of the Shriners before you can be invited to be a jester. You have to have gone through the whole shebang before you can get even invited, invite only, to be a part of the Royal Order of the Jesters. So it's implying the jester, the clown, is above Freemasonry. Like it is the god of it all. It's way up there, you know, it's the pinnacle of the hierarchy in that respect. That's such a bizarre symbol to have as the pinnacle of your pyramid, but not until you understand my theory. It all makes perfect sense. They are. I mean, I haven't even described how the Nephilim are representations of clowns. I mean, do you want me to break it down so we can get into that?
Do it.
Yeah. So first of all, you have to understand, and normally when I do these talks, I break down biblical history first, but I think if I do that now, we'll be going on forever. So I'm going to highly summarize it. The seraphim angels who mated with human women, as discussed in Enoch and in Genesis 6, they were serpentine-looking creatures. Other cultures called them feathered serpents. For example, outside of biblical canon, they're always referred to as serpent-like beings. In Australia, the creators of the Wanginas, the clown-like entities, they were the rainbow serpents, heavenly entities that came from the sky, snakes basically, flying snakes, dragons. Okay, whatever you want to call them, that's the seraphim angels. They're the ones who mated with human women. Cain's, the daughters of Cain specifically, are the ones who did that. They're the ones who rebelled against God's creation and offered themselves up to mate with the fallen angels to further corrupt God's creation. That was the point of it all. It seems like the mark of Cain may have been incredibly pale white skin, from what I'm looking into my research. I could be wrong. There's many speculations about that, but it does fit in with my theory. So in terms of speculation, I think it's worthy to take on board as a possibility. The source for that is from the Book of Lamech of Cain, which is a very recently released book from the Vatican. So take it all with a pinch of salt. But Lamech, from the lineage of Cain, specifically says in that book the mark of his people from Cain is leprous white skin. Now that would make sense because the base of a clown is white skin, deathly ghost white skin. Now it's probably a trait that the Nephilim would have had, picked up from their lineage through the human side, through the daughters of Cain who would have had leprous white skin. Mix that with a fiery serpent, which are these psychedelic beings from heaven, these seraphim angels, where you get something akin to what a clown looks like as a base. You know, you get a white face skinned thing with a huge, wide, grimaced mouth, elongated, pointy features like a dragon, like a serpent, like a viper, mixed with human features like big, wide red lips, eyelids, ears, freaky stuff. You know what I mean? Hair, actual hair, which, you know, serpents don't have hair. These ones had feathers from the looks of it, but the humans, the Nephilim, had hair, which was bright red, fiery, you know, a bizarre, unnatural, unhuman colour. The big wide grin is because snakes can open their jaws incredibly wide. They had that to get it from their parents, from their fathers. So that's why, you know, the base of a Nephilim, it literally is pale white skin, bright red hair. That is the base of a clown. That's basically it. They literally looked like clowns with big wide smiles by nature of the serpentine features mixed in with human features. And then the psychedelic clothing of a clown, let's say, as a archetypical symbol, is probably representative of the psychedelic nature in the skin of their own skin. The Nephilim had serpentine features. Reptiles, snakes, are incredibly psychedelic looking things. They're not bland creatures, they're incredibly colourful with insane patterns. They're like bright creatures, multicolored patterns and psychedelic forms all over their bodies. Have you seen I don't know. Have you seen the underbelly of a basic like corn snake? It's a black and white checkered pattern. It's insane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Beautiful.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I mean. But nature has a very psychedelic coloured palette, you know, and that's the Nephilim too would have had their bodies probably were covered in patterns, polka dots even. You know, whatever it was, some kind of serpentine, weird hybrid pattern was all over their skin. Clown clothing, I believe, represents that nature. That's the point of it, to represent the psychedelic skin that they would have had inherited from their parents. The neck ruffle of a clown, you think it's to represent aristocracy of the day. That's probably the esoteric version of the story they'll tell you. They're mocking the rich people, the pompous people of the time. But actually, reptiles have a frill around their neck. Some of them do. And it's the same thing. It's a reptilian frill wrapped around the neck. The most famous example of this was probably shown in Jurassic Park when the reptile opened its thing up and spat in the face of one of the people. That was hinting, you know, that reptiles can have a frill. But there is a perfect example of that in Australia. There is literally a lizard that has a big, giant, floppy frill around its neck. It can open up at will. So reptiles do have frills. Clowns also have a neck frill. It's just a symbol to represent a reptilian feature. That's all these clown clothing items are. Clowns have big shoes because giants have big feet. Clowns have exaggerated sized gloves that make their hands look big because giants have big hands. Or they'll have a tiny hat because they're huge and hats are small on them. Or they'll have a tiny umbrella because they're giants and umbrellas are tiny to them. You know, it's all just a joke or a reference to their height and their size and the way they look. Clowns are often bald in the middle and have an elongated brow ridge up here to show that they have a much wider, longer skull than the average human, because the Nephilim had big, long skulls, which we found examples of in Paracas and all over the earth, but mainly Inca examples, the most prominent. But elongated skulls is a strictly Nephilim feature. The red nose, there's many theories as to why they had red noses, but the first theory that I came up with is it's just they were eating blood, so the nose dipped into it. It was always red from the cannibalistic nature. But I think that's too simplistic. I don't think that's what it probably was. From my research, I think they literally had red noses. And I think it's actually a side effect of having incredibly pale skin. I think they had extreme rosacea to the point where they developed rhinophymas, which is a version of extreme rosacea. It's actually a part of the curse of the Celts, which is something
You also get a very bulbous nose too, as well, when that occurs, right? A very swollen,
extremely swollen,
very
bulbous
red
nose.
nose.
But I think it's just a curse of actually being incredibly pale. It's just something that can happen if you have that condition.
And most of the Celts get it a lot from alcoholism.
Well, actually, it's a myth. There's no link.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought it was. I thought it was as far as
Yeah.
like contributing alcoholism.
It's one.
Rosacea is also tied to gut issues and genetic factors as well.
It's 100% genetic. The rhinophyma. It's nothing to do with alcoholism at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So the stigma that it's to do with drinking too much is actually a lie. It could happen to anybody who has this regressive gene in them. Just like people get hemochromatosis, like possibly myself, you know, could have this regressive gene in them. It's just the reason it happens. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. You'll get a rhinophyma or you won't. But it's prominent in people who have incredibly pale skin. Now the Nephilim had the palest skin, so I think most of them probably developed this issue. And you look at people with rhinophymas and they are big, bulbous, red noses. That is it, and I think that's probably the case. But there is another theory. There's a tribe in North America who were constantly battling with giants. The city cars, they called them. And the city car would scalp the giants and keep the hair as kind of this big red mane as like a special gift, like a keepsake, and they would make robes out of them. And they would call them something like ceremonial robes or something, or mourning robes. That's what they would call them. And she was describing the encounters with these things, and she describes them as the noseless ones. So it's possible the red nose is symbolic of them not having a nose, just having a big gaping red hole there instead. Because her ancient tribe supposedly battled with these red-haired, pale-skinned giants, has this name for them, the noseless ones. It's such a bizarre name, you know, and maybe that is the case that some of them, it looks like they have a big red hole in the middle of the face. So that's another possible reason for the red nose. Whatever it is, it's a symbol for the giants. It's not just a funny thing to honk, you know, which is in the modern day understanding of it. It's literally a representation of what they would have looked like back in the day. And you often see clowns that have a black line going down the eyes on each side. That's a reptilian slit. They have reptilian features. They also have reptilian eyes, which have a line rather than a round pupil. You'll often find the high brow ridge that they paint on them in black is coloured in blue. If they close their eyes, it looks like they have big blue glowing eyes, because that's exactly a feature of the Nephilim. They were said to be the glowing ones by nature of having giant blue glowing eyes, not humanoid at all. Big, bulging, horrible looking things, bug eyed in nature. Clowns are often seen wearing stilts to emphasize their height again, to show that they are giants in symbolic terminology. Everything about a clown is a representation, a caricature, an over the top, grotesque imagery, metaphor, simile for the giants. Everything about it. And it's by design.
I mean, not just about the clowns thing, but in general, yeah, this is all making me think of like the Nazis and the Aryan race. You know, pale white skin, bright blue eyes.
Yeah.
You know, and also you can jump over to the what they people would call the Nordics or the Palladians, who also are supposedly real blue eyes, pale white skin, beautiful looking people. You know, obviously these are probably the fallen angels, but you know, you everything you're saying, I can picture different. What would be the word for it?
Representations.
Yeah, different representations that kind of all break down that can go back to the Nephilim and the clown subject that you're talking about now. Like this might not be connected, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like in Alaska, there's a tribe in northern Alaska, right, that has tales of fighting off giants and stuff like this. But in Alaska, you also see these statues that are very very colorful and mostly depicted as like a kind of like serpentine like. I don't know what they're called, but you can look them up online. But I don't know if any of you know what they're called, but they're like these statues in Alaska, and they're very, very colorfully painted, and a lot of them are in serpentine-like features.
Um,
Yeah, I've heard about them, and also I guess one thing, Paul too um, it's Isaiah, right, that talks about the seraphim too, um, as well as kind of being fiery and having wings and having a serpentine like appearance too as well, right? I think it's like Isaiah 5 or 6.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
remember offhand.
The most exact description we've found of what a Nephilim an angel specifically looks like was actually from the Book of Amran, found in the Qumran cave with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I think it was Amran, the father of Moses. I forget this. He's a relative of one of the major players in the Bible. Anyway, he has a vision where he sees basically Lucifer and Michael together, a good angel, a bad angel, And he says Belial, he calls him, which is another name for Lucifer and for Satan. Literally had the face of an adder. Like, so we know he was a seraphim. We know he was right next to God. So that's our biggest hint that the seraphim angels will literally look like vipers. They look like snakes. Like the face looked like a snake.
I think I remember Gary Wayne talking about that one time.
Yeah, yeah. The biggest direct description we have of the facial features of the fallen angels, of Lucifer specifically, who is a serpent. Well, the whole point of the fallen angels, the serpent's bloodline Gary Wayne talks a lot about is because of that nature. That's the point, And the serpent cults have continued all the way down to today. People, who are in positions of power in secret societies and rulership believe they have serpent blood in them. That's the divine right to rule, not by God's nature of divinity, but by the fact that they are part divine being. They are part angel. They have serpent blood in them, gifted to them from the heavens, from the angels, from Lucifer himself. Um, so that's the whole point of it. That's why they are dragon cults. That's why snake symbolism is rife in the occult. That's the whole point of it. It all goes back to just the serpent-like nature. Not all angels were serpent-like, don't get me wrong. I think Ezekiel describes cherubim as being like the living creatures, and they had heads of lions and goats and all sorts of things mashed together,
Human heads as well too.
Yeah.
Which
But I
I
mean,
guess what you mentioned snakes. The ancient symbol of the tribe of Dan actually was a serpent. It might be something you might want to look into because the tribe of Dan, of course, is removed in Revelation, right, as one of the 12 tribes of Israel. But kind of like their ancient symbol was a serpent. And of course, you have the Danites, mentioned in the book as well too. Samson being one. You can almost say the book of Judges being the book of Danites. But that's something you might want to look into. Is that the ancient symbol of the Danites was a serpent.
I'm reading a quote here from Genesis 49. Dan will provide justice for his people As one of the tribes of Israel, Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so that the rider stumbles backwards. I look for your deliverance, Lord. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this myself, but yeah, it does seem like Dan has been synonymous with the symbol of a serpent. That is interesting.
Yeah, it might be something you might want to look into. I find it interesting too as well. I'm not going to go on a tangent on this tribe of Dan right now. I've been doing a lot of research on tribe of Dan with my friend Aaron Bachman for Underground Publishing, and my research partner S90. But I just thought, since we're talking about serpents and kind of talking about the tribe of Dan is very interesting in that it's symbolically, was a serpent and everything. And it later, was counted, removed from the 12 tribes. And there's also the early church believed that the Antichrist would come from the tribe of Dan as well too. Which was very propagated in the early church, since its names were removed from the 12 tribes in Revelation. So
Interesting. Yes, it's not where my research has taken me, so I couldn't say anything about it with any authority at all. So I'll leave that on you.
I was just saying it's something you might want to look into. It might be a side, but there might be something there.
Absolutely, there probably is. I mean, there's stories, of, if you understand that, like, a lot of God's people, they weren't perfect, and a lot of them probably did maybe fall to the wayside and give into the serpentine race, and follow that path instead. Um, and I think it's the idea, that you blot them out from the book of life, those who obviously go that way. And it's why the book itself, I said this in that talk with Sam Tripoli, but it's basically, the Bible is just a book of genealogies for that specific reason. It's to make sure people know exactly where the bloodline comes from, who is and isn't of the serpentine race, basically. And it's trying to prove, from Seth all the way down to Jesus, that it's a pure lineage. That's the whole point of being so meticulous about bloodlines, and why you have these families and these names that do disappear from the book, you know what I mean, and are blotted out in that respect. And it's all about the serpent war. It's a seed war, as Rob Skiba would call it, And yeah, that's interesting. I'll look into that myself now you pointed out to me. Yeah, but it's just not where my research has taken me specifically. I've just been drowning in clowns for the past year myself.
Jeremy, is there anything you want to ask Paul in closing? And that we definitely want you to plug, fundraising that you're doing for your book, and
Yeah.
understanding conspiracy, your YouTube channel, which I myself have been a follower for a while. Paul, but is there anything you want to ask in closing, Jeremy? Is there any other questions else that you can think of, brother, or anything?
No, I just want to say thank you for coming on, man, and we'd love to have you on again. I'm sure there's a whole lot
very
more we
much
can
so.
dive into. I didn't know if there's anything else that you wanted to touch before we got off of here. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up?
I'm just trying to think about what we've not covered to say for next time. Well, we've not talked about DMT jesters that much, and the psychedelic realm, which I think it reaches a lot of New Age thought. Maybe we can save that for next time, but quickly summarized here is the entities you're meeting on the other side are just the Nephilim spirits. They're nothing special. Where they are is not a special place. You're not going to a special place when you go to DMT. You're just going to a very basic realm where things cannot be embodied. That's as simple as that. It's actually a lesser world than our world. It's not a better world. It's a place where form can't take form. It's where consciousness has no form, basically. We live in the embodied world. We live in the best world. We live in the place where those entities on the other side want to be. And you should count that as a blessing that you're here and not there, rather than playing with drugs to try and go there instead and think that place is better. There's a reason why God says not to do that, because it's not that he's not a fun guy and doesn't want you to have a good time, It's because the entities that are currently in that realm are the disembodied spirits of the dead Nephilim. It's a war zone, and if you go there ignorant and not aware of what you're dealing with, you're going to lose that war, unfortunately. You know what I mean? You're not ready.
Demonically possessed.
Yeah.
I mean, that definitely can happen.
Yeah.
Has happened to, sadly, many people have become demonically possessed through the use of psychedelic drugs, or using, meditation or occultic practices that are forbidden. And God forbid them for that purpose, because for one, the sin of witchcraft is akin to rebellion. And second, it does open you up to demonic possession. And if you're a Christian, demonic oppression. And it's something that we, definitely should speak out against, because in this world where do what thou wilt reigns, you're getting a large amount of pushback if you try to take people's use of psychedelic drugs to numb the pain of the world instead of coming to the only truth, which is our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. People get very upset about that. They get very upset. Once you tell them that, hey, this isn't good for you. I've been there. It's not good for you. It wasn't good for me, and it's not good for you. And only Jesus Christ can bring you that peace and comfort that you seek out, and understanding of the world that psychedelics will never give you the truth. It won't, it will only be a lie. It'll only
Well,
be a subjective lie.
the sad thing
So,
is that they take these things like DMT because they want to try and find evidence of something higher, another world, let's say. They're looking for answers, aren't they? And they think they're going to find it by taking DMT and going to this spirit realm, as they call it, this other place, And they're looking for spiritual beings. They're looking for spiritual confirmation, for answers. I suppose in a way they're looking for God. Unfortunately, God isn't still here on the world, which is where you're actually going. The sad irony is when they take DMT, they aren't leaving the world. They're still very much within it, and that realm is very much a part of this world. They're not going anywhere special. They never even left the world, and they think they've left their body and
yep.
projected themselves to another dimension. They haven't. They're still here. The DMT realm is just the other side of the coin. The DMT realm is the matrix code. It's the green code for this world that's being projected. The DMT realm is just behind the walls. It's the pipes. It's that run the building, the thing that we're supposed to be experiencing. It's the warp to the woof of a carpet. It's the underside of a carpet. It's the mess where all the strings connect from the artist weaving. The other side where we live is the design, the thing that's perfect, the thing that God intended us to be. Taking DMT takes you nowhere special. That's the lie. That's the lie you've been told
That's deep.
through so many people who there are characters out there who try and tell you take DMT, go to the spirit world, communicate with ascended masters and spirit guides. Nope, you're right here on the earth. You're just perceiving it now because of the drug. It's otherwise locked away from you because it's not necessary to perceive it all the time. It will drive you insane if you did all the time. Be glad you can come back, because those beings who are there in that disembodied state on the earth, trapped in that matrix, we'll call it, they want to get back here desperately. They hate it there. It's horrible. It is hell to them. They have these thoughts, these desires, this consciousness, these feelings, this hunger, and they cannot satisfy it in any way, shape, or form. They have no body. They are desperate to get back here. You are the prize to them. Your body
Yep.
is the prize. Okay.
You're the vessel.
And they're trying to convince you that where they are is the prize. Where they are is better. It's a lie. It's a lie. And
It's a lie from the pits of hell.
Man, I've never heard it explained like that. That was awesome.
No,
It's so true too. We are the vessel for them to get out of that side, so they can, because they thirst, they hunger, but they're off in the wilderness, like they're stuck there.
It's that
essentially. I mean, it's still mixed in with this earth, though. You know what I mean? Obviously, demons are very present. And could do physical things, even though they may not be manifesting physical, but they, it's kind of mind-boggling when you try to think about what is behind the eyes, like what they're seeing. You know what I mean? Because you've seen like the DMT trips, and we can only, artistically articulate it. You can't really look at it unless you're doing the drug itself. I mean, there's plenty of videos online where they show you animation and all this stuff, trying to explain their experience. But even that's enough to be like, man, I would not want to be stuck there.
It's all demonic. It's all demonic. And yes, obviously there's a spiritual realm, a supernatural realm that's around us, and everything. But when people do that, it's they're rebelling against God, and in doing so, they're accepting whatever they come in contact with to come back with them. And then, like you said, Paul, they're trying to experience to be on Earth again. And there's a lot of people. I mean, I myself, when I was a New Ager, and we talked about this, Jeremy. We've had shows on it where I had sleep paralysis and delusions and visions and everything like that, where I was being demonically possessed and oppressed. And I guess something, Paul, I'd like to talk about next time with you is go in depth into the Hat Man. And kind of the representations of Satan is something we didn't get to talk to. That a lot of people with sleep paralysis end up having, the visions that they end up having of demonic entities,
Mhm.
in the power of people having faith and actually calling out to God, repelling or ridding such enemies, of God's, power being able to do such. It's not like a magical incantation people are saying. It's God's power that these beings flee from God's holiness and Jesus' holiness and the holiness of the Holy Spirit.
I can
You
attest.
know,
Sure.
and so, that's something I definitely want to talk to you next time if we hopefully have you on again, brother. Is discuss, every stuff that we didn't get
Yeah,
to
it's
touch on your broad body of work.
it's impossible to touch on everything in 2 hours. It really is.
Yes.
I mean, on Sam Tripoli's podcast, I'm disappointed. I literally just scratched the surface. I had so much more to say that I just did not have time to say.
Great show though.
It was fun. It was good fun, yeah. But the thing is, I'd love to talk about the music industry as well and the art industry in the movies, and how they use the magic of dressing like a clown to gain power. A lot of quickly, like musicians, for example, channel demons to get skills and power. They dress a certain way to do that, just like the ancestor spirit worship tribes do. Once you notice it, it's everywhere. I have a whole body of work dedicated to exposing it all. There's
You
just
guys need to look at Lady Gaga and her stage performances. Enough said right there.
well, that's one example of
Yeah.
thousands. Unfortunately,
Yeah, right.
it's everywhere. It permeates every form of creative design industry that you can imagine. Every
Very
single
much so.
every single creative design industry is dominated by demons, basically, and people who channel them. It's kind of I'll summarize it like this: if you want to make it in this world as anything creative, dress like a crazy clown monster, and you'll get there. You will be elevated.
Let's do it.
That's basically
Sounds like
it.
I'll do it.
That's
All right.
basically it. Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find you, brother.
Um, I'm on YouTube, so understanding conspiracy. You'll find my logo. It's the yellow star with a red circle in the middle, basically. You can also find me on Twitter by searching at u_conspiracy. You can also find me on Telegram. If you type in Understanding Conspiracy, I have a great group on there. You can join in the conversation. That's wonderful. Share all your clown findings with us, and we love it on there. And we're always sharing our ideas with one another. So that's another place you can find me. So yeah, YouTube, Twitter, and Telegram are the three main places. I'm also on Odyssey and BitChute, but I don't use those platforms. They're just backup platforms, just to make sure my body of work never disappears if I ever get banned. But you can follow me on there if you want. I'm currently writing the book on this subject. I am 14 chapters in. I'm about halfway there. I've written about 50,000 words, 100 pages so far. And I plan to have that finished, hopefully, and published halfway through next year. So it's a long process, but I'm working on that. If you want to fund that project, there is a GoFundMe you can find on my page. It's kind of a pre-order system. Any amount at all will get you a special thank you in the book, unless you want to be anonymous. That's fine. But if you pay £100, which is about $125 or more, you'll get a free signed copy of the book once it's published. So that's kind of the pre-order system I've got going there. And mainly the costs of that GoFundMe go towards paying for buying image rights and publishing costs and copyrighter costs, all that stuff. So that's what it's basically for. But that's it. That's where you find me. YouTube is the main spot. Follow me on there. I have many more videos about many subjects. You go to my playlists. I try to keep them all separated into different sections. So that's where you'll find me.
And then one of the last things is I enjoy that you do is you film yourself talking when you drive to work sometimes,
Yeah.
just giving out thoughts of current events or research that you were doing, almost like a vlog style. And I very much
Yeah.
appreciate that. It's something I don't do personally myself, but there are many YouTubers that do, and I do enjoy listening to those. So I want to definitely thank you for those too as well, and for your body of work. And definitely thank you for being on By Their Fruits, brother. And we'd love to have you back on in the future.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having
thank
me,
you, man.
guys. No, thanks for having me. I'm happy to come back on. We'll arrange something, definitely. That's fine for me.
God bless. God bless everybody. That's it on our end. Take care. Hopefully, we'll be back within a couple of shows here quickly instead of a matter of weeks. And take care, everybody. Bye.
God bless.
Thank you. All right, guys, thanks for listening to that. The guys have gone now. Yeah, it was a fun little talk. I enjoyed it. I'm going to quickly catch up with the chat, see what's going on here. Well, it looks like not many people said much, which is good. That means you were all listening. That's wonderful. I don't know how many people I had in the chat. I wasn't following any of that, to be honest. Let's have a look. Wow, we reached 73 at its peak, was it? No, 90 people at its peak were watching live. That's a new record, guys. That's a new record for the live show. Wonderful. That's great. Obviously, I think a lot of Sam Tripoli's listeners have probably come over, and I have them to thank for that. I hope you enjoyed this. This isn't actually my usual live show format, if you are curious. I do a weekly show every Sunday called the Truther Therapy Sessions, and it's basically a place for us to discuss our angst and anger over recent events, and obviously talk about ways of dealing with knowing the truth and how we can best cope with that and the consequences of knowing the truth. And I usually give a little presentation as well, where I show some of my recent research, some random musing and ideas, things that might not necessarily make it into a video of their own, but interesting stuff nonetheless. And then I have a bit of a conversation with everybody. So if you like that kind of format, every Sunday I do a 2-hour show, 8 p.m. UK time. That's roughly about 12 in the afternoon Central Time, I think, roughly. It's either 5 to 8 hours difference to America. But yeah, guys, that was fun. Let's just see what we've got in the chat. Say hi to people. I've got my loving wife there. I've got AS8990. Thanks for being here. Congratulations on your Sam Tripoli appearance. You're going to be reaching a bigger and bigger audience. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Kanga Kong, thanks for being here. Would someone please drop a link to the podcast Paul just did? I'm so tired of everything is taking long. I actually did just post a video of the podcast in my community tab on my channel, the Kanga Kong, if you want to watch it. Humble Stranger, good to see you. And Sabaner, good to see you. James Edwin, thanks for being here. Space Marine, the show is boring so far. Yeah, sorry for the long opening. We were just discussing some technical things before we started. So we've got Humble Stranger, that's great. So you guys, Drunk Wedding Photographer, thanks for seeing you. That's it's always a pleasure. I hope there wasn't much modding needed during this live chat. Like I said, I've not been able to look into it myself, but I trust my my people. Burning Man apparently is going to hell. Yeah, I saw videos of literally fire tornadoes going down in Burning Man. That was crazy. Maybe I'll have to look into it and do my own video about it. But the Festival of Clowns clearly had its retribution today. I'll say that much. Literal pestilence of Burning Man this year. Fairy shrimp are hatching there too. So I'm counting that as locusts. Interesting. Paul, understanding conspiracy, you should talk about what's happening at Burning Man. The ritual got ruined. Good, I suppose. Something got crazy always happens at that event every year. It's just a pagan festival, isn't it? At the end of the day. Histories, Mysteries Revealed. Thanks for being here. Cool name. Zolodius, thanks for being here. I have no idea what Galahad 007 is on about there, so I'm going to leave it. Learned Elders of Timo. Everyone and their mum are into the New Age Gnosticism. That's true. I know, right? Tell me about it. Elusive trust and externalization of the hierarchy, says random comment. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going. We're living that right now, the externalization of the hierarchy. All things that are hidden are becoming known. That seems to be how it's going. Gethin Jones, just discovered you from Tinfoil Hat Appearance. Great channel. Really relates to your story and history. Had similar experiences with DMT and actually encountered a jester. Well, Gethin Jones, I'm glad you like the channel, and yeah, our story is everybody's story. It seems in the Truth of Culture, that's for sure. It's funny. One of my best friends has the second name Gethin Jones, so you threw me off for a second there. But I'm guessing you're not Adam Gethin Jones, my mate, are you? So I'll leave it at that. As I mentioned before, even Christians I know snap when I reference Paul's work. Really, many Christians don't like my work either. You know, I've met a few. I've met a couple who really hate me. I have. It's a shame, really, because I'm on their side. I don't know why. I don't know why. Ah, yes, the Jester God. Many have experienced this entity. Yeah. Um. Oh, brother, I'm out of here, says Ray. Okay, bye. Shrine of funerals are nuts. I've never seen a shrine of funeral. I'll have to look into that now you've said it. Love how God sometimes uses tools of the enemy to bring people to him. That's right. Clowns visiting sick children is so wrong. Infuriating, really. It is in light of this new theory, isn't it? Absolutely. Laughter is a good medicine, but clowns just aren't funny. That's right. So I'm just gonna have a quick drink here. What's left of my my Coke from McDonald's? Give me a second. Might be a prophecy coming true. Perfect red heifers. Sacrifice for the third temple to be built in the mount. Maybe we're getting all theological, are we? Rennie McRae. Are either of you familiar with Jonathan Kleck's interpretations of the Elohim creators? It lines up with these ancestor creators. I used to watch a lot of Jonathan Kleck's work years ago. I haven't looked at it recently. I've kind of forgot what he was all about. He said a lot of things, Jonathan Kleck, in a very weird way. The way he cuts his videos, it was difficult for me to watch, to be honest. But I did watch him for quite a while back in the day. Um, so we can discuss Marvel methodology, but not discuss the infallible word of God. I don't know what you're talking about there, CD 101. The speaker is not of God. So you're saying I'm not of God? Is that what we're saying? Discernment, it's ridiculous at its core. Scripture do not exegise. Yeah, I don't know what you're saying there, CD 101. I'm sorry if I've offended you. Whatever's going on there, I don't know who you're talking about or anything, to be honest. There is a lady who is subbed here. Her name, I think, is Texas, and Mama in it. She was telling me she was ill as a child and went to a Shriners hospital. Her Shriner came over to take photos, and they wanted her to take it without a shirt on. Oh, that's dark. Suddenly, to show her arm that she had been cured, she said she used her arms to keep her modesty. She said other things too sounded horrible. Yeah, the Shriners seem like a dodgy group. Paul does tie all this in scripture as well. There is too much evidence in other areas, so he brings all of that to the table. The message is that clown imagery throughout history to today were demons. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I don't know what your issue is. I'm sorry I don't live up to your standards of what is necessary to say about believing in God. But I assure you, I am a born again Christian, and Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Jesus Christ is everybody's Lord and Savior. They just don't realize it yet. They wanted her to take it without showing. Yeah, okay. Texas Mama Bear. Yeah, I've heard of Texas Mama Bear before. I think she runs a homeschooling channel, if I remember correctly. Is that right? I'm thinking of somebody else. But yeah, I've heard of her before. Speaker is from masonry. How do I know discernment and the careful prancing around the word of the small g Lucy Lucifer? I've never pranced around exposing Lucifer as their gods. I am not a mason, not even in the slightest. Your discernment, I'm afraid, is extremely lacking there, CD 101. I'm afraid. What is the name of the movie Paul is talking about? I think it's one I've been trying to find. Clown, I think it was called. Is that the movie I talked about? Blavatsky was brilliant for a heretic, yeah. It's evil dressed in what is perceived as innocent. Satan deceived the whole world. He did. That's what the clown exactly is. Did you hear about the Nottingham Joker, Paul? He was a beggar that would dress as a clown joker on the streets. He dropped a TV on a council worker's head from his flat window. Jesus. I've not heard of that one, the Nottingham Joker. I will look into that though. Now you've mentioned it, that sounds very interesting. I'm trying to find funny little stories where people who associated with clowns have done silly stuff like that. Horrible things. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of stories of people dressed like clowns or take on the persona of a joker or a clown and end up doing some horrible stuff. It seems to happen quite a lot. Trump was dressed as a clown in Snoop Dogg's video, then he gets shot in his music vid. Yeah. Is it Bad Bad Not Good? Is that what the song's called? I've actually done a full video breaking down that music video in my Nephilim Look Like Clown series, Knife Life. So go and find that if you want. Sorry, Nana P. Knife Life says, yes, I think he's trolling, trying to make the Messiah look like a joke. I mean, he only wears white, blue-eyed Jesus shirts, which is complete mockery, and he continues to dress that like a clown. So I think we're talking about Richie. Yeah, we're talking about Richie the Barber, aren't we? Whether or not we trust him. You think he's an enemy on the inside. See, I've given my opinion on Richie. As before, and I don't want to dwell on him too much. But yeah, from what I can see, I don't feel like he's that sincere in his faith. He could possibly just be a new Christian who's overzealous right now. But he hasn't shown any signs to me that he's actually letting go of his persona and his worldliness yet in any way, shape, or form. I don't think he's truly changed like he thinks he or says he has. It's possible that he could just be an agent though as well. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's hard to say. Um, I hope he is good, but you just don't know. Race not grace, sin not skin. That's right, humble stranger. Sorry, I was reading there about Jesus having blue eyes and ginger hair in Roman descriptions. Um, hair robe sounds itchy. Yeah, I've written it in my book actually about what they do with those. It's where the practice of scalping comes from as well. I think it was removing the hair of these Nephilim that they killed. They were kind of like prize trophies because it was an unnatural color. You know what I mean? It was an insane color. Paul, you're hitting home runs. Excellent, says Kanga. Thank you. Uh, Talking about what Jesus looked like. Fair enough. Um, Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to read through all these comments. Hey, visiting with Paul. Thanks for being open-minded and exploring this topic. No worries, ears to hear, eyes to see. Thanks for being here. Talking about two races. Serpent Seed, yep. 52 thumbs up out of 83 people watching. Thanks, Kimberly. Thanks for being my cheerleader there. I appreciate that. Saw Twilight Zone with the clown last night. Watched with new eyes. Yeah, wherever you see a clown now, you'll not be able to look at it in the same way ever again. That's basically what's going to happen from now on. I've ruined clowns for you all. I'm sorry. The funny thing is, right, I actually don't care about clowns at all. When I'm not doing this, I'm not thinking about clowns. I've never cared about them. I've never had any like form of giving them a second thought my entire life until recently. Like, I'm not really like a clown enthusiast in any way, shape, or form. I kind of having to force myself to research the history of clowns just for the book because it's not really what I'm that interested in. Do you know what I mean? But typical, I'm the one that now has to talk about clowns all the time. It's interesting. I guess that's just kind of God's sense of humor. History's Mysteries Unveiled in the chat has content coming soon on his channel. So subscribe to him, guys. History's Mysteries Unveiled, copyright. And check out whatever he's going to produce soon. Amen and amen, says Sir Alexander Full. And he's just donated $5 Canadian. Thank you very much. What's the comment? If they assassinate Trump and he comes back to life, maybe Elon chip. Antichrist? My thoughts last week. Now you remind me of Trump clown video. Yeah, I've heard a lot about Trump being the possible Antichrist. I have. I'm open-minded to stuff like that. I am, but I'm also not willing to put all my eggs into one basket and then be so certain about the type of stuff. But I will definitely have a, keep it in my repertoire of possibilities, so I'm not deceived when something does happen. Absolutely. So, yeah. It's interesting to think about that kind of stuff, and everyone should keep their eyes on that character. But I know there's been plenty of antichrists throughout history that people have pointed the finger to when they crop up. So, you should be careful. But it's definitely fun to speculate. But I wouldn't bank on those. I wouldn't put all your chips and money on those bets. I really wouldn't, because who knows? There may be a lot more to come yet before the Antichrist turns up. Thanks for the show today, says Ricky Maru. Always learn so much during every show. You've got my mind opening to the clown theory, and you put in a great perspective. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. You need to look up some of the Danny Phantom cartoon series characters. Some of them came off as being very clownish and basically behaving like a demon. They reminded me of Beetlejuice as Jack Smith. That's right, and I believe you're the one who told me about the killer who killed his workmate who was obsessed with one of the characters from Danny Phantom as well. Yeah, dark stuff. Never liked clowns, just seemed like nonsense. Now I I understand it now, says Nana P. Yeah. May have to donate to the book effort, says Sir Alexander Full. Please do. Like I said, the links are down below if you want to get involved. Like I said, you can choose an anonymous option, but if you don't want to be anonymous, I will give you a special thank you in the book. Any donation will get you that privilege. But if it's over £100, so about 125 American dollars, you'll get a free signed copy of the book sent to you by myself once I've published and ordered them. I will not stand for this clown phobia. Well, choleraphobia is the word you're actually looking for there, Falsgeron. But choleraphobia is perfectly justified in my eyes. They're literally representing demons, and there's nothing scarier than a demon. So it's going to have to stand, unfortunately. This is a clown-free zone. Yeah, I'm prejudiced against clowns. I'll say it. Clowns deserve rights too. I disagree. There we go. I'm getting a book. Yeah, guys, like I said, the book's in progress. In these live shows, if you don't know, if you're new to it, I do share a lot of stuff about my books in these live shows. I do readings occasionally as well. I give progress updates as I write chapters. You know, I give overviews of what I've written and where the direction of the book is going. So if you want to keep up to date with stuff like that, then I recommend checking out the live shows. I occasionally publish the odd chapter as I write them as well. Yeah, that's good fun. If you want to support the book, I would greatly appreciate that. Like I said, in all honesty, you know, I reckon it may take, I don't know, maybe just less than a year to get it fully done, dusted, edited, published, printed, everything, you know, and out there for sale. It's a long process. But like I said, I'm writing it. I am writing it. It's getting there. I'm currently on chapter 14, which is the history of the clown. So I'm seeped in clown history at the moment. And I literally am just swimming in a sea of clowns. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm trying to summarize it all in maybe like a 4-page chapter, which is really hard because it just goes on and on and on and on. And then the next chapter I have to write about is secret societies and their veneration of the clown as well. So, you know, the plan's there. All the chapters are mapped out, so it's going. The progress is going well. Yeah, sorry, I just got an email though. I was just checking quickly. Yeah, but guys, I think it's been a good show. I think I've said hi to everyone. I've got a bit of a got to know a few new faces in the chat, which is always great to see. It's like we've had a good turnout today, which is wonderful. I hope you like the work, guys. I hope you stick around to see what else I come up with, and I hope you get involved in the community. If you didn't hear about it, I do have a Telegram group you can go and find. The links are down below in the videos, or if not in this video, check one of my more recent uploads, and the link should be there in the descriptions. Join in, join the Telegram. Start sharing your thoughts, images, anything you've found clown related. I'm always interested in seeing. Always, who knows? Maybe it'll make it into the book, eh? But yeah, check that out if you haven't already, guys. To people who do follow me, I'm on Twitter now. I've started to actually use it. It's called X, isn't it? It's a good way to network. I've been invited onto a few group chats there, and I've networked with a lot of people, podcasters on there. I don't have many people on Twitter, many subscribers or followers, I think they're called. So you want to go follow me on Twitter, that'll be appreciated. And I'm always posting random little things on there, mainly just throwing shade at idiots who are clearly satanic is what I've been doing lately, and spamming my Nephilim clown stuff to anybody who dresses like a clown. Just for a bit of, I'm just using it as a bit of fun. I'm not taking it too seriously, but go check that out if you're interested. But yeah, guys, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I will link their version of the podcast once they upload it. Obviously, this was just a live recording. Go check them out. Go follow them on the links down below in the description of this video. All the affiliated links are down there, so go check them out. Buy their fruits. Nice guys. I met them through Jesse Spots. He recommended them. Or no, he didn't recommend them, but someone who, I don't know, I can't remember how it all happened, but Jesse Spots was involved. So that's it. I might get Jesse Spots on to have another talk with us soon, to be honest. I've been trying to, and that should be fun to reconnect with an old friend there. Mods, can you provide a link to Twitter? I will provide the link right now before I leave. So anyone who wants to join on Twitter, follow this link, which I'm about to post in the group chat. Give me 1 second. Let's go to my accounts. I think I've got to type it in at you. There it is, right. So I'm going to copy that. And this is it, guys. I'm going to post it now. Follow that link, and you can go to the Twitter and start following me on there as well. Love this guy. Why the Star of Remfam thumbnail though? I did explain it in this video actually, but it's there because it is the enemy's symbol. It's the thing you have to understand the conspiracy. Okay, so it's there as the thing, as like an amalgamation symbol of everything you need to understand. So it represents the planets. So it's Saturn, Venus and Mars, which represents the false trinity, of the mother goddess, light, and the sun worship, and also war in the middle, and the Antichrist is the red dot representation. It's also inspired by symbols of an alien sky, in which it said that people worshipped an image of the alignment of the planets, which is shown below, where Saturn was the main sun at the time. It's also made up of sacred geometry, because the New Age agenda is embedded into the symbol, and that's something that's also a deception you have to understand. If you look at my main symbol or image on the screen here, if I can get it up, as you can see, I've broken it down, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the symbol of the conspiracy, we're going to break it down into its individual pieces and understand each one individually before we put it together and see the bigger picture as a whole. That's basically all the symbol's there for. It's a symbol of the conspiracy you need to understand, and that's it. That's all the symbol's for. I know its connotations to Remfan, I do, and I understand that. I'm not for it. I don't promote it. My words, explain that quite clearly. And remember, it was created during a time when I was a New Age Gnostic trippy thinker, so it's kind of a remnants of that as well. And I'm not going to rebrand or change anything now. I like it. It's my history. It's where this channel came from, and I think it still holds strong today as it did when I first created it, to be honest. So there's the explanation for the logo again, if you're interested. Yeah, it's not being donned or glorified necessarily as just there. I suppose in a way I'm kind of luring in the New Ages as well, so that I can then beat them over the head with Jesus. I guess it's kind of what I'm still doing with it. I think Jesse deleted his YouTube channel. He did. We didn't delete it. He got kicked off of YouTube. Someone forced him off, and yeah, it was a big thing. But he's on Twitter. You can get him on there, and he's also on BitChute occasionally. Yeah, so there you go. I've explained it all to you now. I'm gonna go, guys. Thanks for listening, and as always, God bless.